Respected guests, unless you've been living under a rock every single day, we are constantly bombarded with the news of destructive floods, destroying the homes of families, destroying homes of innocent animals, global warming, and also biodiversity loss. This brings the question, what is exactly happening to our beloved country and also to our beloved world? Welcome to You Are Already Series 4.0, the challenge of sustainable development. Can Gen Z make a difference? Before we start, allow me to introduce our honorable speaker. For today, we are truly blessed, privileged, and also honored to have our VIP speaker with us. Let me introduce to you our VIP speaker, Tan Sri Dr. Zakri Abdul Hamid. Welcome, Tan Sri. Okay. Thank you so much for today's event. So let me introduce him a little bit. But before that, I would like to tell everyone, when we did research on him, searching about his background, there's actually more than 4 pages regarding his background. But for today, we will highlight 5 of it. So I hope everyone here are aware with it. Okay, first of all, he is currently the chairman of the Archery Advisory Consultancy Company, advising the government and also on science, technology, and also sustainable development and the sustainable use of biodiversity. At the same time, he is also the joint chairman for the Malaysian Industry Government Group of High Technology, Pro-Chancellor for Multimedia Malaysia, and Pro-Chancellor for University Perguruan Sultan Idris. For your information, his expertise lies in higher education, biodiversity governance, science diplomacy, and international relations. He is a science thought leader. He has contributed on observation, analysis, and assessment of global biodiversity and also ecosystem services. For your information also, he was also the science advisor for our Prime Minister from 2010 until 2018. And this one is going to be, everyone going to be shocked with this information. He is also one of the 26 members of United Nations, the United Nations Secretary General Scientific Advisory Board. He has been appointed by the United Nations as the co-chairman of the STI Advisory Board of the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and also Pacific. So give him a round of applause. Alright, before we start, I'm really sure everyone here has filled up a survey, right? So from that survey, we actually get more than 50 responses, and then we are happy to say that all of us are aware with the climate change, with the biodiversity loss, and also aware what is happening to our environment. So give yourself a round of applause. Alright, so let's talk more about environment. Alright, so before we start, since we want to encourage more interaction, like two-way interaction from you guys yes, can answer? Sure. Also can ask about environment. This is a golden opportunity. Anything regarding the environment. Also, you guys can get knowledge. Free, like positive gift. Eco-friendly items. We have pens, bags, and also water bottle here. So I hope you guys are ready for today's event. Okay.
express my to me Hashim instrumental in getting how you would have to ask her. I had an introduction that is quite serious. I hope if I start lecturing on that, some of you may fall asleep. Let's talk about my background first. Yeah. Let me start by saying that I'm a kampung boy, and one of the things that influenced my life, of course, the first person who influenced my life was my late mother, who is a very strong woman, who is the light of my life, who inspired me throughout my career. But nearer. All right. That'll be okay. So just to tell you all, kampung boy, when I first left my kampung in Pahang and went to study at the College of Agriculture Malaya, College Pertanian Malaya. That was when many of you may not even have been born. Yeah. So at the end of the 1970s, we had a big hall here, and I'm not sure whether all of you may have the same reaction. I was timid. I sat at the last chair of the last row in the room. Then there was someone who, and he approached me. He was one of the key lecturers at College Pertanian Malaya, and he said, "What's your name, boy? We speak English, even that time." I said, "Zakri, where are you from?" "I'm from Bentong, Pahang." He said, "Follow me." I followed him, and he put me on the first chair of the first row of that big hall, He said, "You sit down here and let me tell you something. Zakri," he said, "fear no one. Fear no one." Yeah? I remember that. Going to university, first in the UM, then I went to the United States, and I stayed in the United States and finished 3 degrees there. My bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD. And the words of the late Pak Rashid never left me, really. I do not really fear anyone. So I can speak to you as the chair, president, prime ministers, sultan or kings, but you should anyone. I think that's one of the lessons I want to impart to all of you today, that we should be looking, we should be strong, and we should fear nothing. Yeah? But at the same time, be humble. All right, that's the first chapter. Yeah, go ahead and ask other questions.
All right, so guys, please remember, don't not scared with anything. Just be confident, and then actually everyone here can do it. Don't fear no one. So since that Tan Sri really have the words to him, so I'm giving this word to fear no.
You can ask me questions afterwards, yeah?
Okay. Alright, so first question is actually from me, myself. Okay, so for the first question, this is actually regarding the Convention of Biological Diversity. And then this is the one that you attended before, right, sir? Okay, so it is highlighted that Malaysia was on the right track, but awareness was lacking. So can you share with us how this statement the Malaysia was right on track, but we are actually lack of awareness.
It's very serious. You know? You may what I'm explaining. Let me go. Okay, let me go back to set the setting. The chair mentioned about this biodiversity. You may know the definition, but really the issue, as in your introduction, is about sustainability. And sustainability is practicing a life which is balanced and moderate. When we say sustainability, it means today the world is in trouble. For instance, one is climate change. And what causes climate change? It is caused by the emission of so-called greenhouse gases, namely carbon dioxide and methane, which by human life, that using of cars, okay, emission of these gases, which cause methane and carbon dioxide, which block the heat from the sun. So you have an increased level of temperature. Yeah, it's very much higher than when we first started out. In fact, global warming started at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. So one is climate change when you talk about sustainability. Secondly, the one that you mentioned, biodiversity. Biodiversity is just plants and animals on the face of the earth. And you know, biodiversity and ecosystem services, these are elements that produce food, water, clean air, and everything else that human depends on. So right now, biodiversity is under threat of extinction. So what that means in layman's life, if we go ahead with this unsustainable way of life, we'll be in trouble. We won't have enough to eat, for instance. You may have heard of the word food security, food insecurity, that's one of it. Yeah? And the third one about unsustainable waste due to human activities would be pollution, particular plastic pollution, which is everywhere. All right. And now let's go to your question. I'm trying to make the storyline simpler. What was your question about biodiversity?
So just now I mentioned it's about something related that Malaysia is actually aware. Malaysia is actually right on track, but there are lack of awareness.
Okay. So in terms of biodiversity, as I said earlier, is under threat of extinction, and this is due to, for instance, deforestation, due to opening of land for agriculture. In Malaysia, you see a lot of the oil palm, okay, and the use of what else? Housing. So destroy the natural forest. When I say Malaysia is on the right track, we have government policies, government programs, government projects which try to reduce deforestation. For instance, Malaysia have a good program on setting aside land for conservation. That means protected areas. A very simple place for conservation of protected areas would mean Taman Negara, yeah, where you can enjoy Taman Negara, but you cannot fell the trees, you cannot remove the plants or animals from there. So it's kept on the right track. The government makes sure that we practice sustainable forest management. For instance, you don't clear cut the forest, selective logging. So that's what I meant by saying that Malaysia is on the right track. But it is not enough. Why? Because in the process of deforestation, sometimes we destroy the habitat for the inhabitants in the forest, not only the plants but the animals. A very iconic one which Malaysia got problem with the world is when pictures of orangutan fighting bulldozers trying to remove those timber. That is, and that is the reason, one of the reasons why the younger generations like you have a heavy responsibility. You have to be aware that we need to have an approach where we can conserve the forest, but at the same time we encourage development. When we say development, have you all heard of the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 Development Goals? Raise your hand, those who have heard of the SDGs. Angkat tangan. How many of us in the room today? About 15. There's only about less than 20 who are aware of the SDGs. So my first advice is for you to read what is the SDGs. This is a UN global goal to encourage people to practice sustainable development. So today, that consciousness is not there yet. Okay, people are still throwing rubbish in the river. For instance, you would see that the Klang River, Sungai Klang, is one of the most polluted river in the world. Yeah, we are celebrating Michelle Yeoh for an Oscar a few days ago, but we should be ashamed also that we have one of the most polluted river in the world. And why is that so? Because our citizens are not conscious of the need to be sustainable. That's the response to your question.
Actually, Tan Sri, I'm living in Klang. And then I've seen that place, like that Sungai Klang, ya Allah. I don't know how to say, but it's really dirty. And then it looks...
Teh Tarik is alright.
Oh, Teh Tarik is alright.
Yeah, no, but the pollution there.
Yeah.
The empty bottles, you know, the rubbish, the carcass of animals and all that. And for some of you, like to travel to, say, Tokyo or Seoul, or even just reading them or watching the news. In Seoul, you can walk the streets of that city, you can see the fishes running in the water, clear water. Same thing like Japan, in Tokyo. Those fishes can be running in the street. Why? Because the citizens are very conscious of the need to take care of the environment. So when you talk about the environment, when you talk about sustainability, it's not taking care of the environment, it's taking care of our very life. Yeah?
So that was really detailed, the explanation. Okay, now the floor. We also have our friends from Sabah and Sarawak. So in case you guys have question, you guys are actually joining the any question right now. So I open to the floor. So is there any question?
If there's no question, our audience from Sabah and Sarawak, how many of them are online now? From Sabah? Ada?
Our
from Sabah, among the regions of the two regions.
Don't anymore, eh?
their regions. The most advanced of consciousness about the environment. I used to live in Japan for nearly 10 years. I worked for the UN University. So every year or every 2 years we got a chance to go back home. And my favorite tourist spot in Malaysia is Sabah and Sarawak. Because we enjoy the pristineness of the forest and the inhabitants. You go to lower Kinabatangan, you can still see, if you be quiet on the riverbank, the pygmy elephants, the crocodiles, the proboscis monkey, orangutan. They have a large tract of land which they conserve, and that should be related to the world. You know, Malaysia is not any country. We are very proud of our natural resources, and we are also trying to preserve them. But I will also tell you some of the negative one if you ask that, but that will be later. Yeah? But just for Sabah and Sarawak, they are the two most conscious regions in Malaysia in terms of protecting the environment. But here in the peninsula, have you all heard of Tasik Chini? Angkat tangan. Tasik Chini. Ya, dia tak tahu ke? Yang marah ni. Tasik Chini is in Pahang. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site because that is the area where they still try to maintain the pristineness of the area. Yeah, and it's a fable area, the legend of the dragons, you know. That's such a name, kan? And a few years ago, this World UNESCO Heritage Site is under threat. Why? Because people were mining nearby that lake. People were cutting the forest until there's some big criticism, and the government and the NGOs try to call on our consciousness to preserve Tasik Chini. Last I heard they're trying to having a rehabilitation program in Tasik Chini. So what I'm saying, back to your question about nature, yeah, Sabah in the peninsula also we tried our best. The other one is a blue forest reserve, yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, we must also appreciate, while we conserve nature, our country is an urban nation. More than 50% of the population live in the cities like Kuala Lumpur, Johor Bahru, Ipoh, Penang and all. So a lot of people are from town, and many of you now are living in town. So in some ways it's difficult to balance the pristine areas with development. All right.
Alright, so just now I saw some audience want to ask questions. Okay.
Please do.
My name is Ideal. So regarding the question, speak loud. My name is Ideal. So regarding the what you say just now about Sabah and Sarawak, I asked some of my friends. Some of them, they want a recent development in Sabah and Sarawak because of what they view in Peninsula, what they're lacking of. But in my own opinion, I still want to retain the environment and nature there. So my question is, how does sustainable development in the sense of environment can still maintain with the development in Sabah and Sarawak? Thank you.
Yeah. First, the definition of sustainable development. There are three pillars to sustainable development. Okay, social, economic, and the environment. Three legs. Definitely, we want our people to progress. So, socio-economic development is very important. But at the same time, we're saying you must try to preserve some aspect of the environment, forests, rivers, and all that. The question: how do you balance that in Sabah Sarawak? Your question.
How we want to balance development and also
This is an ongoing question. When you talk about sustainability, you always hear from elsewhere, in particular from the industrialized countries. Countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, you must not cut the forests, in particular Sabah and Sarawak. Yeah, they still have lots of land. That is fine, but one must realize this climate change is the consequence or started by people in industrialized countries, the Western countries, the developed countries. They are the one who's telling you don't follow those laws. When in actual fact, these are the countries who started all these unsustainable ways, all those elevated temperature. For us, I think to answer your question, and I hope you understand, we are still in a state of development. We are still called a developing country. We are still called negara membangun. So we need to develop, and sometimes we need to open those jungle. We don't open those jungle now, not as large as before. But you know, when we gained independence, when was that? Independence?
1957.
Yeah, I'm just pulling his leg.
I was shaking.
Yeah, even as early as 1957. In fact, during the time of Tun Razak, our second Prime Minister, he is so far-sighted, and he said, I want to give land for the landless. I want to give jobs to the jobless. So Tun Razak started the so-called Felda scheme. How many of you are from Felda scheme? Angkat tangan. Felda scheme, tak ada seorang pun. All are town people. Tok Nenek dulu pun not from Felda. But no, they open up the jungle to provide land, to provide job for these poor people. In Malaya, Malaysia, was nearly 50%. 47% of those people are poor, including my family from the kampong. But today, you guys are in finance. The level of poverty in Malaysia today is less than 10%. Everybody 5%. So, kena kat topi lah. You have to raise your head. Malaysia has done well. The SDGs, the SDG number 1, poverty alleviation, agreed by the UN in 2015. Yeah, 2015. But Malaysia have been practicing SDG number 1 since 60 years ago. Poverty alleviation. So you must be proud of that. At the same time, we must be conscious. We're not going to destroy the environment. There should be a balance. There should be a balance between the need to conserve, to protect, and to develop. And to develop, one of the aspects is through R&D. Through R&D, the oil palm, which you will see everywhere, which give me goosebumps every time I travel into the interior of this country. That is a lifeline for Malaysia. But through R&D, we have now oil palm plants which can produce high-yielding palm oil. So that means through research, we can plant trees under less land coverage. So that is something that we must be proud of. I hope I respond to your question over there. All right.
Alright, I'm still gonna open question to the floor. Is there any other one to ask Tan Sri?
I'm sure there are lots of questions. Let's hear some questions from the ladies. Go ahead.
My name is Haifa. In your opinion, what is the simplest effort that we can do to prevent or reduce the climate change? Thank you.
Very good question. What can we do as a citizen to mitigate climate change? It's our way of life. Sometimes it's not our own individual shortcoming, but it's the system, is the structure. One, you see, for those who are going to work or going to lectures, they drive cars, and those cars, individual drivers. We have no choice, isn't it? Because our infrastructure is not enough. The best way is to take public transport. Now we can't do that. You have to have your own cars. So one of the ways is to take public transport. Like in a country like Japan, they'll leave their cars at home, use it just the weekends, but they take the train. So hopefully one day we can come up to that level. One is reduction of the use of petroleum, fossil fuel. Yeah. Secondly, the way of life. We don't really need to spend much on material things. As they say Malay, using berpada-pada, in moderation. There was a question Ms. June forwarded to me. Okay, if you think that you want to reduce your footprint, shall we go vegetarian? And many people in the world, including Jane Fonda, would opt for vegetarian diet. They thought that's the best way. If you like that, it's okay. But for most of us, we still like all those rendang, all those fish and all that. So my response is, you don't have to be a vegan. Carry on with what you're doing, but eat less, more balance, And you see, Ramadan is coming, and all you need to do or read afterwards the level of wasteness that we are practicing during Ramadan. All those food waste. If only we can practice what our religion would profess, we will be in a more sustainable manner, also then reduce the impact on global climate change. So, air condition. We don't live in our houses in the kampong. We use that have natural airflow. But now you switch on the aircon, and sometimes the lights are on all the time, and that is global warming. Why? Because the source of that energy now in this country is through what? Coal. Coal is using renewable, and now many homes, for instance, have solar.
Okay, question from me. Okay, since just now she already asked regarding what can we do as a citizen, and then can what companies they can contribute in them to ensure that the brighter future of the environment.
Okay, first the role of government. We are a democracy. Government is the leader, but the real power is with the citizens. Why? So 2 years ago, my company did a polling among young citizens from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. I think in each country we poll about 1,000. Yes, the role of companies is very crucial. One of the big stakeholders in the debate on and eventually sell their products, they must practice sustainable development. Yeah. For instance, there are now this debate between Indonesia and Malaysia and the European Union, who insisted that they only trade in sustainable palm oil, and that means to reduce the usage, to reduce deforestation. If the companies are not producing environmental friendly products, they would lose. They'll be out of business. So that is why today, and you guys in finance and business, you know, even Bank Negara, Securities Commission, the EPU, and more Ministry of Finance, they are insisting that companies also play a role. And this is not only Malaysia, it's not only in the region, but it's global. Yeah, it's global. To practice sustainability. Yeah.
Alright, so before we open question to the floor, we actually have like impromptu question for Tan Sri. And then this impromptu question is basically like to just break the ice. Since you guys seem so sleepy, everyone okay? Okay, so Tan Sri, this is going to be a question. And then I'll answer this question as well.
Is and roti canai. And now and then McDonald's, and once in a while does it steak, you know. There's some good ones, but not to the point of being excessive. Yeah. Louder?
This one louder.
Alright.
Okay, test. Okay.
Ask me about food, yeah?
Alright, next question. Just now you mentioned you like McD. We have McD in Intermark, then we can go after this, hang out together.
Yeah, why not?
Alright, okay, second question. Okay, since like you are now an educator and also researcher, do you have any other dream to achieve before you are here right now?
No, I'm happy with what I've done, where I've arrived today. I'm really a global citizen. I don't feel foreign in any foreign place. I used to work at the UN for nearly 10 years, and I used to spend Ramadan in the Amazon and Aidilfitri in Machu Picchu. Yeah, no, but it's a lonely life, you know. But the experience is tremendous, and my attitude is the whole globe is my neighborhood. And I just came back from a business trip in Pakistan. I went to Islamabad, the capital, and business city Karachi. I just want to how lucky we are in Malaysia. People complain about life here. People complain about many things. But just to relate to you, in Pakistan, if I wanted to go to downtown Karachi to do some sightseeing, I have to be accompanied by an armed guard with a rifle following me everywhere. And on the way back to the airport, the flight was at 6 a.m. There was a guard accompanying us to the airport. So what does it tell? It tells that the country is not that safe. Here you don't see that at all, and yet we still complain. So this is one of the perks that I have experienced in nearly 40 years of traveling the world. I've seen many things, and you think Malaysia is poor, all you need to do is go to the Skid Row in Los Angeles. You see a whole block of homeless Americans. Tak cukup makan, tak cukup pakai. Those kind of things, you know. So the lesson here again is be thankful for what we are having now, but that is not to say to be complacent. You guys got to raise the bar, make this country greater, and each one of you has a role to play. Don't say, oh, I will stay at the sideline and watch the world go by. No way. So this is the essence of living the sustainable life. No one is a bystander. You have to play your role. Give you another example. One of my mentors is Pak Emil Salim, the former Minister of Environment in Indonesia. Emil Salim, you check it out, his name is a real hero. So Pak Emil was trying to reduce deforestation. Apa pasal? Tak dengar lagi. So Pak Emil was trying to reduce deforestation. I think it's in Bali. So how would he do it? He said, untuk ambil wudu, air di kali itu haruslah bersih. Ini sekarang macam kopi susu. So he told the villagers and the loggers, stop those illegal logging down to upstream. Then you can have clean water. Then you can take clean wudu, you know. So that kind of message. So you see, these are things that we can practice every day, all the time, each time.
So I hope someday I can celebrate my Raya with penguins.
Yeah, you can, but you have to go to Antarctica. And you know there are groups of Malaysians who used to do research in Antarctica. Yeah, yeah.
So they spend time with penguins. I want to meet penguins so hard. Alright, so moving on to the next question. So actually we have questions from YouTube live.
Okay.
So the questions sound like this. Okay, so the first question. Hi, I would like to ask some question. What are the short-term impact of global warming, and how is it leads to the long-term effect? This is from Hamid Saleh from Kota Kinabalu.
The immediate impact we have already experienced. Stronger storms, heavier rainfall, and flood. That is the immediate impact. And I must share with you 2 years ago during the great flood of 2018, where Pahang and parts of Selangor were flooded. My family and I were one of the so-called climate refugees. Our house, the water in Bentung came up to the ceiling of the house. We were lucky to get out, but we lost many things. We lost many things, as you would see, muds and all that. That is the immediate impact of climate change. And internationally also, you must have read the big floods in Pakistan. Yeah, those big floods where many lives and property were lost. But on the long term, it's much dire. You know, they would be even climate refugees who would lose their homes, their property, and everything else. And on a grander scale, some of the islands like Mauritius, Maldives, not sure about Langkawi, would be subject to rising sea level rise. So the long term, that's one of the reasons why the global community through the UN insisted that increase in temperature shouldn't be beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius level. But we are not doing too well because in the majority, we don't really care. I'm not sure whether you guys here are conscious about your own responsibility, you know. So go back to the earlier question about public awareness and the appreciation of the consequences that we would face eventually. Yeah.
Alright, so moving on to the next. Okay, so basically what we can say here is we are actually the one that responsible towards the future of the environment. So everyone here, this is why, this is one of the steps how we remind and how we tell others that we actually need to do something about our environment. Alright, moving on to the next question from online. Okay, thought some of us has taken some steps to promote a better climate for Earth, but the changes like ice melting are still happening. What can we do about this?
That is a very well-known description. Every time you talk about climate change, you have the image of these polar bears sitting or standing on a piece of ice melting. Very tragic. That is on a global level, you know. But you must also reflect what we can do here. For instance, in fact, you all should find local examples. Have you heard of those turtles off the coast of Terengganu being so-called poisoned or killed by consuming plastic? That is a consequence of unsustainability. So you have to find that. Like for instance, to appreciate the role of mangrove. Well, there are projects, and Ms. June, I encourage you to try out some of those programs with your students here. Mangrove planting. Why is mangrove important? Because mangrove is a buffer to for instance, tsunami. You remember during the Aceh tsunami? The mangrove is a savior to that. It acts as a buffer of the strong waves. Yeah, and also mangrove is the place of breeding for the fish, for the prawns and all that. So we must appreciate that. You thought the mangrove is a low being, but it is very key to a good ecosystem.
Alright, now we already heard the questions from the live streaming. So we still are going to open question from the floor. Is there any question that you guys want to ask Tan Sri? Oh, sure.
Lady from here.
Ladies first.
Yeah.
Tansri, my name is Poshin. So heat wave are happening
So
throughout.
can you get nearer to the mic?
Yeah. Let's speak louder.
Oh, Tansri, my name is Poshin. So heat wave are happening throughout the region, especially the southern hemispheres of Earth. So it will occur Malaysia also or not?
What's the last part of the question?
Can you hear the way?
Thank you.
The heat wave.
Heat wave are happening throughout the region, especially the southern hemispheres of Earth. So it will occur the Malaysia or not?
What is already happening? Is already happening across heat waves, floods and all that. Those are the manifestations are forecasting is the intensity of those heat waves, intensity of those flood, intensity of the rainfall, and the unpredictability of the occurrences of those phenomena is going to get worse, and humans are going to be affected. But the point here is the people who are most likely to be affected are the most prone, the poor people, with those shanty houses and all that. They are the ones who are going to suffer the most. Some of the people can escape, go to other places. But it's a real social problem. Yeah? There's another question at the back.
Alright, so there's another question from the back.
Hi sir, my name is Amar Rashad. As we know, one of the biggest issues or things that's happening now is usually see young adults or people from society having coffee, like from Starbucks or San Francisco coffee, and coffee is sometimes considered a public resource or a common. So one of the issues I feel like I just wanted to ask you, sir, can humans escape the tragedy of the commons?
Can humans escape the tragedy of the commons? What does that got to do with Starbucks?
Starbucks is technically a source.
Yeah.
So as known that that's a public resource that's being used, can be used a lot and has a lot. But if people are not aware of them using this resource a lot, they could finish this resource and deplete it. So, and that is considered the tragedy of the commons, as I know, where we use the public resource a lot, and then next thing we know, we don't have that resource anymore, and that's something that will also be considered extinct. Can we humans escape that tragedy of the commons?
You are very pessimistic, and for young men, you should review your stance. You should be more optimistic. I don't think there's anything wrong consuming, but in other parts, Starbucks originated in Washington State, in the US, but its center or origin of coffee is in Ethiopia, and production area, which is one of the biggest in our part of the world, is Vietnam. So what we're saying, you can still consume those, but be responsible. You also here relates to the question of food security, and food security also relates to the level of consciousness of us all to be moderate in our consumption. Shouldn't be over consuming those products. As long as you are aware of those pros and cons. Yeah, not only coffee, it's also something to do with tea or rice, Yeah.
Alright, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, next. This is the question from me. The question sounds like this. What is your opinion? Okay, since like we already know that we have solar system, we can generate electricity using water and from using sunlight. But have you heard about that we can actually use seaweed for us to produce a sustainable and also more eco-friendly energy? So can you share with us, like, what are your opinions on
the natural resource that our friend over there was saying about coffee, and there's a lot of uses of seaweed. You mentioned about that. That is very true. But again, these natural resources needs to be nurtured. They should be appreciated. Seaweed, nowadays there is some efforts of farming seaweed, as you know, and in Sabah there are some seaweed farm, and the potential is great. In fact, seaweed can also be a source of aviation fuel. You know, aviation fuel now is what, made of kerosene, but there are already efforts through R&D to convert the seaweed into sustainable aviation fuel. The acronym is SAF. So to answer your question, the potential is tremendous, and there's some good work about seaweed doing here. But that is only, Chair, a tip of the iceberg. Malaysia is what they call a mega diverse countries. When you are a mega diverse countries, that means the jungle has a lot of potential. There are many plants or even insects in the jungle which has not been researched fully. For instance, many of the medicine that human derive today are from plants, and many are still not discovered by science. So just an analogy to the seaweed you mentioned in the forest. Can you imagine, and there are plants that can be cure for serious diseases like cancer. You heard of the African periwinkle? No. African periwinkle is a plant that is a source of medicine for childhood cancer. And you can imagine there are others there in the jungle which is not being discovered. So we have to discover them. And this is one of the argument again to conserve, that let's do and find out what are those plants that we can be used for medicine and also for industrial uses. I mentioned about sustainable aviation fuel from the seaweed, but there are others too, you know, for industrial purposes. Just like the palm oil, which is a great product base for many industries besides just the cooking oil. Yeah.
So basically we can use seaweed to produce some sort like kind of jet A1, because jet A1 is the one that we are using for aviation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow, so we can use seaweed.
Yeah.
Instead of we eat tau kenoi, you know tau kenoi?
Yeah.
That tau kenoi is seaweed, but
Yeah.
we also can make jet A1. Wow, that's impressive. Okay, so we open the questions to the floor. So is there any questions to ask to Tan Sri?
Ask me some simple question, fun question, you know? Less on the science. I see people leaving the room already. More questions? Yeah, please, this young lady over here. You can also speak in Malay, I can understand Malay.
Okay. Assalamualaikum Tan Sri. My name is So I have a question. While talking about climate change, we usually relate human activity, forestation, housing, etc. So my question is, does climate change actually happen solely because of human activities, or the environment itself could be the possible cause? Thank you.
There's some background impact, natural impact of global warming, but almost more than 90% is due to human activities. and most of that relates to the use of fossil fuels through oil and gas, because as I said earlier, it generates those greenhouse gases like CO2 and methane. These gases would be sort of trapping those heat generated by the sun to escape into the atmosphere. So yes, the question is through human activities. Tremendous, tremendous, yeah. So there was a saying at one time, the geological forces like earthquake, volcanoes and all that, these are geological forces, yeah. And we thought humans are so small that our activities are inconsequential. In other words, you can do what you like. But science has shown that through these greenhouse gases, human being has that power to change the world. We have changed the chemistry of our atmosphere, causing temperature rise, sea level to increase. So that's how powerful and very scary, for human. But the point is, it's still in our hands to change the destiny of the world. Today it can still be okay, for the next few generations. But one day that would be the consequence of a catastrophe. In fact, for us Muslim, it can also be tantamount to a hari kiamat. It can cause that kind of destruction to the world. And this is also because of the greed of human beings. You heard Gandhi once said, there's enough need for there's enough for everyone's needs. So if we just consume reasonably, but there's not enough for everyone's greed. Yeah. Even in our society today, you look at the cars that your parents or yourself own. You can't even survive with one car, but in some household, and I'm sure yours, there might be 3 or 4. So all those contributing to global warming through all this consumption of the fossil fuel. Of course, now there are some efforts like going electric vehicle. Yeah? That can be a source of mitigating this climate change one day. There's still time, but the opportunity is closing up. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So basically, resources contributed towards what happened to the environment right now. So moving on to the next one is
because you sit down here just now, they move. No, I'm kidding. You go ahead. I'm just pulling your leg.
What's your favorite shoe brand?
What?
What's your favorite shoe brand?
Favorite?
shoe brand. Shoe brand is
Kasut, jenama kasut.
Very, very expensive. This is Salvatore Ferragamo, and I like Italian shoes. I don't like locals because they are not durable, not sustainable. These are very expensive, but I bought them in Europe at a discount, 70%, that kind of thing. Yeah. Why do you ask about shoes?
Because nampak berkilau dia jauh.
Yalah, mahal. Yeah. This bought in Tokyo.
like realize my shoe. No, see.
This is Bata, which is still good, isn't it? Yeah, you can still use it. Yeah.
So I think there's another guy just now he raised his hand. So do you have any questions at the back? Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, Nancy. My name is Afi. So I have a question about the IPBES. As a fund, sorry. As a founding chair of the United Nations IPBES, I saw your new report on your recent study about sea creatures, wild animals, and more. How do we as Malaysians can be a part of it in order to maintain our environment?
The IPBES is a UN entity that stands for Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. This is equivalent to the so-called IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is a gathering of world scientists that would sit together and develop recommendations to the political leaders, the civil service, to develop good programs to arrest climate change, biodiversity loss and all that. How do you get involved in that? Usually you have to be a representative of your country. Normally these are senior scientists from the universities or the research institute. But for others, men or women on the street, you can still get involved through relaying your views to these experts. You know? So I would also recommend in a university like Uniraza, there might be sort of a chapter where you would discuss and debate some of the ongoing issues, which then you can relay to the government. Right now, I'm also the chair of the so-called National Biodiversity Roundtable, comprising of scientists, corporate leaders, and NGOs, and we channel our concern to the government, namely the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change, which is now being led by a young minister, YB Nazmi, who is a very good listener. So once again, I think my contention is no one is a bystander. Everyone can contribute and they should contribute. You listen to you. Yeah.
Someone else want to ask a question?
Oh, very good. All of you are coming up with all the questions.
They want to get a gift.
You guys should ask who are my favorite singer and all that.
Soon. It's going to be.
Okay. Good question. Why are we still depending on oil and gas or petroleum? Jawapan dia kerana those material like hydrogen. The use of hydrogen is definitely one of those sources of energy for our future industry and civilization. Cuma sekarang tak sampai ke tahap itu, masih lagi di tingkat R&D, yeah. But one day it will, just like electric vehicle. Now you have hybrids, but one day you may have full electric vehicle. And in fact, some countries like Sweden or the Volvo company has declared by, is it 2030 or 2050, they are not going to produce cars which use petroleum. They're going to be electric, you know. Yeah. Okay.
Alright. So now question from me. It's regarding deforestation. What is the relevancy of EU to enact the oil palm ban to deforestation, since oil palm is commodity for Malaysia? And then how has Malaysia reacted for this case?
This really, in the first place, palm oil is a very good edible oil with many uses for our food, medicine, and also industry. Secondly, it's one of the cheapest oil compared to soybean, compared to sunflower. And if there are opposition to it, sometimes in industrialized countries, it's a trade issue. They want to kill our palm oil industry. Secondly, palm oil has been negatively associated with deforestation, as you said. This goes back to my earlier argument about adopting a countries in Malaysia, which are the two producing palm oil, of course, are not. Of course, the initial go against it, fight it out with union. But I think that is a losing proposition, and this is where countries should hold a dialogue between the EU and Indonesia, Malaysia. And I think yesterday the Deputy Prime Minister YB Fadila Yusof said that they may want to have that dialogue, and that dialogue is also one of my interests, and the interest of what they call science diplomacy. So you always hear about diplomacy, the interaction between two countries, dialogue by the diplomats. But science diplomacy is using science as a basis to point out to your opponents about the use of science, technology and innovation to solve some of these problems on sustainable development. Just to conclude, I think it's a work in progress, but as long as we continue the dialogue, I think we can find a solution.
Alright, so we see not the one at Antarctica, but here. So this, so just now you mentioned that you want us to ask who's your favorite singer. So since you really interested in this question, can I know who's your favorite singer? What is the song? And then can you tell us your best lyric? I mean, like the lyric from the song that you remember the most.
If you challenge me, I can even sing the song.
Yeah.
But we can't do it here. Miss June will be upset. This is a class, you know, it's not a karaoke session. First, I don't understand current musical genre, all those hip hop, and I don't understand that.
Blackpink.
Rap, to me, it's not a song really. I went back. I go back to old times, you know, all those sentimental songs from say Yusuf, Islam, Cat Steven, Neil Diamond, who else, and some of those crooners, you know, like Mangrove. All those, I think your grandma would know, not you all. But I also like some of those ballads by Brori, Parantika, the Widuri singer yang baru lepas, siapa ni? Bob Tutua Puli, you know. So these are old timers. To me, those are the real song. But don't let us start a debate here. It's a matter of choice. Yeah, yeah.
Alright.
Of course, my favorite song is Tinggi Gunung Seribu Janji. But June, there will be another session. Not today. Okay. Any response to that answer?
Is it tinggi-tinggi Gunung Kinabalu? Tinggi
Itu pun
lagi.
okay. Oh, that one is also good. Yeah. What's the name of the singer? Yeah. Siapa memang the name that Sabahan? Jimmy Panikat. Pernah dengar tak Jimmy Panikat? Alhamdulillah. So you all are not too young then. Yeah. Okay.
So for another question, it's going to be related to
Ni dah banyak nak lari ni.
Oh.
Better stop the meeting, you know.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I guess we still is there any question from the floor? Yeah.
You tak boleh jawab soal because you are doing something there. No, I'm kidding. Of course you can.
Assalamualaikum Tan Sri. I just would like to know, because just now you mentioned citizen pun ada power kan. What actually has the personal step you have taken, you or your family, to ensure sustainability around you, or maybe around your house? Because I think if everybody starts small, you'll become big. So maybe you can inspire the audience here. Thank you.
Yeah. We don't own any cars. We take the bus or we use Grab. Of course, I'm kidding. Every Malaysian has a car or more than one car. But it's really about being, really about practicing moderation in one's life, you know. And then that can be all those everyday things that we do at home, like switching off the lights, not to take long hot showers, and then your diet, you know, balanced one, more vegetable, less meat, so that, those kind of things. But it's all about moderation, you know, nothing extraordinary, nothing like going vegan, for instance, or not having cars. So I think in the main, Malaysians are quite reasonable. We just have to watch out that we practice that, you know. Yeah.
I think this is like normal since everyone is student here. Sleepy. I guess we need to give them assignments. Alright, so is there any other question? Yes.
First of all, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, Tan Sri. My name is Hani. I think you did mention about science diplomacy, and it somehow made me reminisce during my school days. I used to read your articles about you in the newspaper, and at that time, if I'm not mistaken, you were the science advisor to the Prime Minister, right? Would you like to share with us some a bit about your job scope at that time, or maybe some major contribution that you contributed while holding that position?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting question and a very interesting experience of advising the political masters. You would have thought it's a complex and complicated job, really, with a lot of formulas and principles and policies. But really working with politicians, in particular political leaders, and first of all, many of the leaders in this country or elsewhere, they are very smart people, including our Prime Minister. At least their approach to science and technology. My boss gives me a very simple instruction. He said, you can recommend all those complex science technology approaches, fine, but I want you to do two things for me which would make a difference. So can you through your advice, create more wealth for the rakyat, more income, you know. Like today, many are suffering. Yeah. Secondly, can those advice translate into jobs? It's very simple: jobs and income. So how do you measure that? You measure that by the level of prosperity that we have. At one time, we are a poor country. Then we graduate into a national income about 5,000 US dollars, but a wealthy country should be around 12,000 US dollars. We managed to raise that into, I think, 10,000 US dollars per year, the average. Yeah. So we're still a developing country. So to respond to your question, those recommendations must translate into real life situation, jobs and prosperity, more money on the table. But you expand that to other areas. It would also means recommending the kind of things that we should have, like clean water, available water, you know. Those are also in the realm of science advice. Secondly, about the level of education in our country. What is the best way, you know? Like for instance, we should give emphasis to TVET, technical education, which is a very reputable job in countries like Germany or Korea. But here they look down on that a bit, when in fact those are the jobs that would give more income. So these are real situations. But the science advisor is the bridge between the scientific community, which always talk into science, and political leaders and policymakers. Your advice has to make sense. So what the scientists convey to you must be transformed into a practical project. So it's very interesting. And this link between science and leaders is already a global phenomenon. I'm one of the science advisors to UN Secretary General Mr. Ban Ki-moon on how to use science, technology and innovation for sustainable development. Same thing, how do you alleviate poverty? How do you provide housing, you know? These are real problems. So students also today must have that attitude. It doesn't really matter what kind of subjects that you specialize in. It can be finance, it can be engineering, it can be accountancy, it can be biology. But the essence of that would be how do you make it applicable in real life, you know? If not, that science that you are professing is not good enough.
Alright, thank you so much. Okay. Second last question. I guess you guys been like waiting when this thing gonna end.
Guys, standing up again. You have a question? No problem. You can.
Do you still have any question?
Yeah, you're welcome. One of my favorite singers, really, Rory Marantika. And two of my favorite singers would be M. Nasir and Ramli Sarip. Yeah, they are really great, you know. I wish they could have a world stage and then they can be millionaires like Michelle Yeoh, but our market is small.
Alright, now
Last question.
yeah, kind of like last question. What can Gen Z do right now for us to contribute to the nature and to the environment?
You are already doing it, I think. The way you are living, you know, the food that you take, the clothes that you wear, the transport that you take, those are all elements of sustainable living. Yeah, and maybe practice the adage of reuse, reduce, and what is the other one?
Recycle.
Recycle. Those are very good principles, you know, and that exist in all societies, and also all religion, really. Yeah, like what I just quoted about Gandhi. Yeah, there's enough for everyone, not enough for everyone's greed. There's enough for one planet, but if you don't practice sustainable development, you need another 3 planets. Mana nak cari? Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess any like last advice for the audience here online and also here with us. Last advice for them, like last word for today's event.
Be alert, but also enrich yourself with knowledge. If you think you don't like books, you go and check the internet. You can use the phone. Knowledge is omnipresent. It's only a matter whether you want to do it or you don't. That's how I started life. I like to read. I read a lot of English book. Have you heard of Enid Blyton? You know? Tak pernah dengar? Yeah, those are very old books, but it opens the window to the world. Like Jules Verne's Around the World in 80 Days, you know, 20,000 feet under the sea. So those kind of classic. So reading maketh human. So my advice, knowledge is the key. I also think that Malaysians of the future, it's not really, maybe I've mentioned that, you know, it's not the subject that you excel in, but to imbue this principle of critical thinking. Yeah, critical thinking is very important. Yeah, that line too you can check from the internet or whatever, but critical thinking, to be reasonable, to be considerate, yeah, that kind of values, and to be humble. And humility, from my principle, which my late father advised me, is to behave like an aeroplane. How is that? To lead your life like an aeroplane. The higher it flies, the less noise it makes. So that's my advice to all of you today. Inshallah, God willing, you'll be okay. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi.
So thank you so much for Tan Sri. Today, what can we conclude today is basically Gen Z, you can, but you also can also contribute as a agent in order for us to change the future of our environment. So we as a Gen Z, what we can do, we can reduce the emission of greenhouse gases by using the public transport. We also can energy. Make sure to switch off your lights. Okay, please don't membazir, tak baik membazir. Okay, so I hope that you guys can gain some knowledge from this event. So I hope that you guys can start doing or start becoming or start contributing towards the environment. So thank you, a special thanks to Tan Sri Dr. Zakri Abdul Hamid for your time for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And also a special thanks to Yuni Razak. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are having a photo shoot session. Photo session, yeah.